When Keanu Reeves's words brought peace to Ana de Armas and Sydney Sweeney, the night was calm, but inside the old theater hall, the air carried a storm of silence. People had gathered for a charity event meant to bring hope, yet behind the soft lights and warm music, two hearts carried quiet unrest. Ana de Armas and Sydney Sweeney, both shining stars in the eyes of the world, sat in separate corners of the backstage area. Their faces looked calm for the crowd, but inside, waves of pain refused to settle. Ana was remembering a heavy loss. Someone close to her had drifted away, not by choice, but by fate, leaving her with questions that never found answers. She smiled for everyone, but every time the applause ended, loneliness crept back in like a shadow she could never escape. Her eyes told stories of strength, but her heart carried scars she rarely spoke about. On the other side, Sydney was facing another kind of struggle. Fame had come fast, like a sudden storm, and with it came voices she never expected. Criticism, judgment, and endless comparisons followed her like whispers in every room she entered. She worked harder, smiled brighter, yet every night she asked herself if she was enough. Her success seemed to shine for the world, but inside she was still searching for a place where she felt safe, understood, and real. Backstage was filled with quiet footsteps, the sound of preparations, and the glow of stage lights slipping in through half-opened curtains. But in that moment, the world seemed smaller, quieter, almost as if waiting for something to happen. Then, slowly, Keanu Reeves walked in. He carried no grand entrance, no loud announcement. He simply stepped into the room with the kind of silence that did not feel empty. It felt safe. Keanu had lived through his own storms. Loss, grief, and broken pieces of life had shaped him, but he had never let them harden his heart. Instead, they softened his voice, gave weight to his words, and made his presence calm like water flowing over stones. People who met him often said he had the power to turn noise into quiet, pain into a breath of peace, and fear into a moment of stillness. Tonight, that same presence filled the backstage. Ana looked up first. Her eyes met his, and though no words were spoken, something shifted. Sydney noticed, too, her tired thoughts pausing for just a moment. Keanu's steps were steady as he moved closer, not rushing, not demanding attention. He simply existed there, a gentle reminder that sometimes the strongest comfort comes not from fixing pain, but from sharing space with it. He sat down between them, on an old wooden chair that creaked softly. For a few seconds, no one spoke. It was as if silence itself had decided to settle in and wait. Then Keanu looked at both of them, his voice low and soft, and he said, "Life has a way of breaking us, but it also has a way of showing us what we are made of. Every scar carries proof that we kept going. And sometimes, the hardest thing to do is to allow ourselves to feel and still believe tomorrow can be lighter." His words hung in the air like gentle rain. Ana felt her chest tighten, not in pain, but in release. She had carried her grief like a heavy stone, but in his words she found permission to breathe, to not feel guilty for carrying sadness and still choosing hope. Sydney blinked back tears she did not want to show. She thought of all the times she tried to prove herself, all the times she tried to outrun voices that told her she was not enough. Keanu's words were not just advice. They felt like a mirror showing her that strength was not about being perfect, but about being human and still daring to try again. The quiet moment deepened, and for the first time that evening, both Ana and Sydney felt something shift. It was not the end of their pain, but it was the beginning of peace. They looked at each other, not as stars, not as names the world demanded perfection from, but as two women sharing a fragile truth. The theater outside was waiting for them, the lights ready to shine, the crowd ready to cheer. But here, in this quiet corner, Keanu's words had already created something more powerful than applause. They had created a bond, a space where pain met kindness, where brokenness met respect, and where silence spoke louder than fear. The night was still young, and no one knew the unexpected turns it would take. But in that single moment, a story had begun, one that would carry twists, tests of resilience, and lessons that would touch everyone who listened. And it all started with Keanu's quiet words that brought peace to two hearts that had almost forgotten what peace felt like. When Keanu Reeves's words brought peace to Ana de Armas and Sydney Sweeney, the sound of applause drifted in from the stage, echoing through the old wooden walls of the theater. Inside the backstage room, Ana and Sydney sat in silence beside Keanu. Though the world outside was filled with cheers, inside their hearts there was a strange calm. It felt fragile, like a candle flame in the wind. But it was real. Both of them knew something had shifted, though they did not fully understand what it meant yet. Ana finally spoke, her voice soft, almost like she was afraid of breaking the stillness. "Sometimes I wonder if I will ever feel whole again. I try to smile. I try to give my best. But at night, I feel like I am drowning in memories." She looked down at her hands, her eyes heavy with unspoken grief. Keanu listened with the patience of someone who knew what it meant to carry heavy truths. He leaned slightly forward, his eyes kind but steady. "Wholeness does not mean we forget what broke us," he said. "It means we learn to live with the cracks, and those cracks let the light in. You do not have to erase your sadness. You just have to let it sit beside your hope." Ana's breath trembled, but for the first time she felt her pain honored instead of hidden. Sydney shifted in her seat, her hands gripping the edge of the chair. Her heart was racing because Keanu's words touched something she had been hiding for too long. "I get scared," she whispered. "Every time people look at me, I think they only see mistakes waiting to happen. I try so hard to be perfect, but it feels like I'm losing myself. What if I am not good enough?" Her words came out faster, as if she feared they would disappear if she paused. It was the first time she admitted this aloud, and her eyes filled with tears she fought to keep from falling. Keanu's voice was steady, deep, carrying warmth that wrapped around the moment. "You are not here to be perfect," he said. "You are here to be real. People may doubt you, compare you, and even try to break you. But the truth is, strength is not about never falling. Strength is about standing again after every fall, even when your knees still shake." Sydney looked at him, her tears finally slipping free, but she did not hide them. For once, she felt no shame in showing her weakness. Instead, she felt the weight of his words lifting something heavy from her shoulders. Just then, a stagehand knocked on the door, reminding them that their time was almost up. They were expected to go out soon, to smile, to greet the crowd, to play their roles. But inside the room, it felt as though time had slowed, giving them a chance to breathe before they returned to the noise of the world. Ana reached over, her hand gently touching Sydney's. It was a small gesture, but it carried more than words could. They both realized they were not as alone as they had believed. Keanu watched quietly, his presence holding them together in a moment that felt almost sacred. Outside, the announcer's voice grew louder, preparing to call their names. The audience had no idea of the storm that had just started to calm backstage. They would see bright faces and hear cheerful words, but hidden behind those smiles would be a deeper story, one that was only beginning. As the three of them stood, ready to step out into the lights, Keanu spoke one last sentence, almost like a quiet promise. "Whatever the world expects tonight, remember this. Your worth is not measured by applause, but by the way you carry kindness, even when your own heart is heavy." Ana and Sydney exchanged a look, and though their eyes still held traces of sadness, they also carried a new spark: hope. Together they walked toward the stage, unaware that the night ahead would bring challenges, unexpected turns, and truths that would test their strength in ways they never imagined. When Keanu Reeves's words brought peace to Ana de Armas and Sydney Sweeney, the stage lights rose in golden waves, filling the theater with warmth. The crowd clapped as Ana, Sydney, and Keanu stepped out together. Their smiles looked natural, but only minutes ago their hearts had been heavy. The world watching them could not see the storm that had quietly softened behind the curtains. Ana stood at the microphone first. She spoke about the purpose of the charity event, her words gentle, steady, carrying hope. Yet deep inside, she carried the memory of Keanu's voice, reminding her that cracks could still let the light in. Every sentence she said now felt more alive, more truthful, as if she no longer needed to hide the sadness within her. Sydney stood next, her voice a little shaky at first, but then it grew stronger. She thanked the crowd, spoke about resilience, and for the first time in months, she did not feel like she was pretending. Keanu's words echoed in her mind. "You are not here to be perfect. You are here to be real." Those words gave her courage to let her real self show. Keanu followed, his presence calm, his tone grounding the moment. He spoke about kindness, about how the world often forgets the small gestures that heal hearts. He told the audience that peace begins not in grand acts, but in the quiet choices we make every day. His words touched the crowd in ways that even he did not expect, and silence fell for a few moments before the applause returned, louder, warmer, almost as if people had been holding their breath. But behind the scenes of applause and shining lights, tension was quietly forming. When they left the stage and returned backstage, a group of reporters waited, eager for statements, stories, and moments to turn into headlines. Cameras flashed, voices rushed, and in the noise, the fragile peace that Ana and Sydney had begun to feel trembled once again. One reporter leaned too close, asking Ana about her private life, pressing about her recent heartbreak. She tried to smile it off, but the question hit like a wound reopening. Sydney watched, anger rising in her chest, because she knew how cruel those words could feel. Then another voice turned toward Sydney, asking if she feared she was only successful because of her looks and not her talent. The words cut deeper than any applause could heal. Her breath caught, her body stiffened, and for a second she thought she might break down in front of everyone. Keanu stepped forward, his face calm but his eyes carrying firmness. He raised his hand gently, signaling for silence, and when he spoke, his voice did not rise in anger. It rose in truth. "You forget something," he said to the crowd of reporters. "These women are not just faces for your cameras. They are human beings who fight battles you cannot see. Respect is not optional. It is necessary." The room fell quiet. No one had expected him to speak so directly, but his tone left no space for argument. He was not defending them as stars, he was protecting them as people. Anna's eyes softened with gratitude, while Sydney's tears finally slipped free, but this time they carried relief instead of shame. Later, when the crowd cleared, the three of them sat together once more in the quiet of the dressing room. Ana whispered, "I thought I would break out there." Sydney added, "I almost did." Keanu looked at them both. "You didn't," he said. "And that is what matters. Sometimes the world will try to take your peace, but you must guard it like fire in the dark. And when you feel it fading, let others guard it with you." The words sank deep, and in that quiet room, Ana and Sydney realized something powerful. Peace was not something they had to find alone. It was something they could share, something they could protect for each other. The night was not over. The event would continue, and the world would still watch. But from this moment on, they carried not just their own strength, but a bond that would guide them through storms yet to come. When Keanu Reeves's words brought peace to Ana de Armas and Sydney Sweeney, the event slowly came to an end. The crowd began to leave, the lights dimmed, and the noise of applause faded into distant echoes. Backstage, the three of them sat together in a quiet corner. The silence after the storm felt heavy, but in that stillness, each of them could hear their own thoughts more clearly. Anna leaned against the wall, her eyes tired but calmer than before. She thought about the questions the reporters had thrown at her, sharp like knives, reopening wounds she had tried to close. Yet when she remembered Keanu stepping in, standing with quiet strength, she felt something she had not felt in a long time. Protected. Sydney sat with her hands resting on her knees. Her mind kept replaying the cruel question that accused her of being nothing more than a face. Those words might have broken her completely, but Keanu's defense had given her a shield. It was the first time she saw someone stop the noise instead of letting it consume her. Keanu noticed the weight in their expressions. He did not speak at first, giving them space, because he knew sometimes silence heals faster than words. After a moment, he said softly, "The world will always have voices that try to reduce you, but you must not let them write your story. Your story belongs to you." His words settled into their hearts like seeds in soil, waiting to grow into something stronger. Just then, a phone rang. It was Anna's manager calling with news that a harsh article had already been published online. Someone at the event had written about her grief, twisting it into gossip. Anna's face went pale as she listened, her hand trembling slightly. Sydney reached for her hand without hesitation. "Don't read it," she said firmly. "They don't deserve your pain." Anna nodded, but tears gathered in her eyes. "It feels like no matter how hard I try to live with dignity, the world only wants to turn my pain into entertainment." Keanu leaned forward, his voice steady but filled with warmth. "Then you show them that dignity is not about silence. It is about rising above the noise. They cannot take your truth from you unless you give it to them. Your grief is not their story. It is your strength." Sydney listened closely, her chest tightening with a mix of anger and admiration. "But how do we keep rising when the world keeps pulling us down?" she asked. Keanu's eyes softened. "You rise together," he said. "You do not fight every storm alone. When one of you falls, the other helps you stand. Resilience is not a solo journey. It is a shared one." The room grew quiet again, but this time, the silence felt different. It was no longer heavy. It felt like a quiet promise between them. Outside, rain began to fall against the theater windows. The soft sound of drops echoed in the hallway, adding weight to the night. Anna stood and walked toward the window, watching the rain streak down the glass. "The rain always reminds me of endings," she whispered. Sydney joined her, shaking her head gently. "It reminds me of beginnings," she said. Keanu walked over, standing between them. He looked out at the falling rain and spoke slowly. "It is both. Every drop washes something away, and every drop also gives life to something new." The three of them stood together, side by side, watching the rain. And in that moment, even though the world outside was restless and unkind, they felt a strange peace. But the peace was fragile. None of them knew that the days ahead would test their bond more than this night ever could. Trials were coming, choices that would push them to their limits, and truths that would change the way they saw themselves and each other. For now, though, they allowed the rain to be their shield, a soft curtain between them and the noise of the world. When Keanu Reeves's words brought peace to Ana de Armas and Sydney Sweeney, the rain kept falling outside the theater. But inside the quiet dressing room, the three of them sat together, holding on to the fragile calm they had built. Yet peace never stayed long when the world demanded noise. The next morning brought headlines, flashing across phones and screens, turning private pain into public drama. Anna woke early, her phone buzzing with notifications. Articles with cruel titles spoke of her loss like it was entertainment. Comments filled with cold words poured in, some calling her strong, others mocking her grief. She closed her eyes, fighting the ache in her chest, wondering why kindness never seemed louder than cruelty. Sydney faced her own storm. Social media was filled with strangers questioning her worth, calling her success undeserved. The words cut deep, sharper than any blade, and for a moment she felt herself slipping back into the belief that she was only a mask, never enough on her own. They both reached out to Keanu without even planning it. Messages sent hours apart but filled with the same unspoken plea for comfort. He answered with simplicity, the same way he had always lived, with honesty. "Meet me," he wrote. "Let's not face this alone." By afternoon, they gathered in a quiet cafe away from cameras, the kind of place where no one cared about names or faces, only about the warmth of coffee and the peace of silence. Keanu sat at the corner table, waiting for them, his presence steady as always. Anna walked in first, her eyes tired but searching for something solid to hold on to. Sydney arrived moments later, her shoulders tense, her steps heavy. When they both sat down, Keanu looked at them with calm eyes, no judgment, only understanding. "The world is loud," he said softly, "and it will always be loud. But you don't have to let that noise decide who you are." Anna's voice trembled. "But it feels like they own my story now. They take it and twist it. How do I stop them?" Keanu shook his head gently. "You cannot control what they write, but you can control what you live. Your truth does not need their permission. Every day you choose kindness. Every day you stand in dignity. That is your story, not theirs." Sydney leaned forward, her voice breaking. "But what if I can't keep standing? What if one day I am too tired to fight it?" Keanu's eyes softened. "Then you let others hold you up. Strength is not about never falling. It is about allowing someone to help you rise again. You are not weak for needing support. You are human." The words pierced her walls, and Sydney felt tears roll down her cheeks. But this time she did not hide them. Anna reached across the table and held her hand, and for the first time they both realized how much they needed each other. The cafe grew quieter around them, the rain outside still tapping against the windows. In that stillness, Keanu's words felt like an anchor, grounding them in a truth that fame and headlines could never touch. Yet even as they shared this fragile peace, a new challenge was already waiting. Keanu's phone buzzed with a message. His eyes scanned the screen and his expression shifted, not with anger, but with concern. "What is it?" Anna asked, her chest tightening. He placed the phone on the table, showing them the screen. A new headline glared back at them, one that twisted his own defense of them into something ugly, accusing him of interfering, of creating drama where none existed. Sydney's stomach dropped. "They're turning on you now," she whispered. Keanu leaned back in his chair, his voice calm but resolute. "Let them. I have faced storms before. What matters is that you both remember who you are, no matter how loud the world becomes." But inside, both Anna and Sydney felt their hearts sink. For the first time, it was not just their pain on the line. Keanu was now carrying the weight with them, and they knew the days ahead would test not only their resilience, but their bond. The cafe lights flickered softly, the sound of rain never stopping. The world outside kept spinning with noise and judgment, but inside that small corner, 3 people sat together, bound not by fame or image, but by the quiet strength of kindness shared in broken moments. When Keanu Reeves' words brought peace to Ana de Armas and Sydney Sweeney, the rain had stopped by morning, but the storm outside the cafe had only grown louder. Newspapers carried harsh headlines, social media was flooded with arguments, and whispers spread like fire. Some praised Keanu for defending Anna and Sydney, but others twisted his kindness into pride, accusing him of seeking attention. Anna read the headlines with heavy eyes. He stood for us, and now they attack him, she whispered, guilt pressing down on her chest. Sydney scrolled through her phone, her hands trembling. They are calling him dramatic. They don't see what he did for us. They don't know the peace he gave. Keanu sat with them, calm as always, sipping his coffee slowly, as if the noise outside could not touch him. But his silence carried weight. He knew the world's words could wound, even if he did not show it. Listen, he said softly, setting the cup down. The world will always create its own story. But our truth is stronger if we keep living it. People can twist words, but they cannot twist actions filled with kindness. Anna leaned forward, her voice breaking. But how do we carry on when they try to poison everything we do? Keanu looked at her, his expression steady. By not letting bitterness take root. You cannot control how others act, but you can control how you choose to respond. And when you choose peace, even when the world gives you war, you win. The words calmed the space, but outside the storm continued. Later that day, they were invited to another event, a gathering meant to celebrate charity work. Anna and Sydney hesitated, afraid of facing more judgment, but Keanu encouraged them gently. Sometimes you must step back into the light, even when it feels unsafe. Courage grows when fear does not stop you. That evening, they arrived together, the three of them side by side. Flashes from cameras lit the air like lightning. Reporters shouted questions, some supportive, some cruel. One voice asked loudly, Keanu, do you regret defending them? He paused, turned toward the crowd, and answered with calm certainty. No. I will never regret standing for respect and kindness. Not for them, not for anyone. The words spread quickly, recorded, shared, and dissected by millions. Some cheered, others criticized, but one thing was certain. The bond between them was now public. The world no longer saw them as separate names. They saw them as one story. After the event, the three retreated into the quiet of a hotel lounge. Exhaustion hung heavy in the air. Sydney dropped into a chair, tears slipping free. I feel like we are carrying a war we did not start. Anna nodded, her voice soft. But maybe this war is showing us what really matters. She looked at Keanu, her eyes filled with gratitude. You gave us peace when we couldn't find it ourselves. Keanu leaned back, his gaze thoughtful. Peace is never permanent. It is something we keep choosing over and over. The world will try to take it, but if we protect it together, it becomes stronger than anything against us. For a long moment, none of them spoke. The room was filled only with the sound of their quiet breathing, three lives tied together by storms, by pain, and by unexpected kindness. Yet deep inside, each of them knew the story was not finished. Bigger tests were waiting, challenges that would shake their courage again, and decisions that could either break their bond or prove it unshakable. The night outside was calm, but beneath the calm was the weight of battles yet to come. When Keanu Reeves's words brought peace to Ana de Armas and Sydney Sweeney, the days that followed were heavy. The storm of headlines did not slow. Every word they spoke was twisted. Every silence was filled with rumors. Yet through it all, the bond between Anna, Sydney, and Keanu grew stronger. They had walked into each other's lives by chance, but now it felt as though fate had tied them together for a reason. Anna was the first to feel the change inside herself. Where once her grief had weighed her down, now it felt lighter because she no longer carried it alone. She still missed what she had lost, but instead of hiding the pain, she spoke it, and in speaking, she found freedom. Sydney, too, discovered a new strength. The voices of doubt were still loud, but now they did not control her. Every time she remembered Keanu's words, "You are not here to be perfect, you are here to be real," she felt her heart steady. She no longer needed to chase approval because she had learned that worth does not come from applause, but from truth. And Keanu, though the world tried to twist his kindness, remained unshaken. He had lived long enough to know that storms come and go, but what stays is the way we treat people when they need us most. To him, this was never about reputation. It was about standing for respect, for kindness, for peace. One evening, the three met again in the same cafe where they had first shared their truths. Outside, the sky was clear, the rain gone, leaving the air fresh and soft. They sat at the same corner table, the memory of their first meeting still alive in the walls. Anna smiled gently. "I feel like the world has not changed, but we have. And maybe that is enough." Sydney nodded, her eyes bright with quiet strength. "Yes, I used to think peace was something given by others, but now I know it is something we choose, even when the world refuses to understand." Keanu looked at them both, his voice steady, his words carrying the weight of every moment they had shared. "Peace is not the absence of storms. It is the choice to keep walking through them without letting them turn your heart hard. You both chose to keep walking. And that is what makes you strong." They sat in silence after that, not the heavy silence of pain, but the soft silence of peace. For the first time in many days, their hearts felt light. Outside, the world was still filled with noise, still waiting for the next headline, still ready to twist kindness into something else. But inside that cafe, three people had built something stronger than noise. They had built trust. They had built resilience. They had built peace. And though the world would never fully know the depth of what happened between them, the truth remained in their hearts. Anna had found the courage to grieve without shame. Sydney had found the strength to stand without fear. And Keanu had reminded them both that kindness, even when tested, never loses its power. The story that began in an old theater with heavy hearts ended here, not with grand applause, but with quiet smiles shared across a table. And in that quiet, they discovered something greater than fame, greater than headlines. They discovered the peace that comes when kindness meets courage.